On Tuesday afternoon, I had an opportunity to talk to Nicolle Wallace about Donald Trump and his contempt for the rule of law, how we cannot assume that he is acting in good faith, and we also shouldn't overanalyze his tendencies to ignore the Constitution. Let's take a look at the clips, and then we'll be right back to discuss.
In a new piece, our friend Marc Elias gives us a jolt of reality when dealing with the Trump administration. Stop acting like this president is a regular president, he writes. Quote, the time has come for the judiciary to scrap the presumption of regularity. It is yet another outdated norm that we can no longer afford. Those fighting to preserve democracy already face a daunting task without judges reflexively giving Trump the benefit of the doubt. Donald Trump is not a regular president, and the courts must stop treating him like one. He is an aspiring autocrat who weaponizes the legal process to undermine the rule of law. Through his words and conduct, he and his administration have forfeited the right to be believed or trusted. We're back with Marc and Christy. Marc Elias, say more.
Yeah, so I wrote this because if you read the pleadings in a lot of the cases that are going on right now, as I do, what you'll see is that the government inevitably falls back on a few standard defenses. And the main one is what's referred to as the presumption of regularity. The idea is that we assume that presidents act in good faith in the public's interest, that when federal prosecutors or DOJ lawyers assert a fact or say something, it is to be believed and to be trusted. We assume that if an agency, has a policy that it advances, it is doing so for proper reasons, not for improper reasons, that everyone in the executive branch is sort of doing the best they can. And the problem with that presumption of regularity is that Donald Trump is not a regular president. He does not deserve that presumption because that presumption is the opposite of what is true. I mean, for most presidents, whether I liked them or not, it was true that they were, by and large, trying to do the right thing. It wasn't always the thing I thought they should do, but they were trying to do what they thought was the right thing. With Donald Trump, what he is trying to do almost always, but certainly more often than not, is the wrong thing. He's trying to profit himself and his family. He's trying to punish his enemies. He's trying to engage in retribution. He's trying to violate the Constitution. He's trying to pay, trade political favors. And so presuming the opposite of that, presuming for the court to start with the idea that its baseline is that none of those things are true, that actually he's a good guy, try to do the right thing, his lawyers are trying to do the right thing, his cabinet's trying to follow the law, it stands the truth on its head, but more importantly, it hamstrings the lawyers who are fighting the government, because the Department of Justice's position is, Your Honor, you have to assume the best out of this White House, not the worst. And so this is not in the Constitution. There's no federal law that requires this presumption of regularity. And it is one of these norms that, frankly, we cannot afford to have. It was a nice thing. It was a wonderful idea of civics. It was nice to think this about our leaders, but we cannot afford this. Democracy will not survive for the next 3+ years if judges have to bend over backwards to assume the best of intentions from a White House that is, in fact, trying to do the worst.
I mean, Marc Elias, it's certainly not where the voters are. I mean, what the voters support, 87% of them, is that people who are adjudicated criminals who are in this country illegally leave. After that, it all is a lot less clear that there's any public support. People with jobs, there's not a plurality or majority of American support for deporting people with jobs. People who've only committed the civil offense of being in the country illegally do not have a majority of Americans who think they should be deported. People with U.S. children are not people that the American people think should be deported. What is the legal framework being used to punish the civil offense of being in this country illegally with a lifetime in a foreign country's gulag known for, quote, torture and sexual violence, end quote?
Yeah, I think that we need to be careful about conflating two things. The first is, what is Donald Trump doing? And the second is, what are DOJ lawyers saying? Donald Trump doesn't care what a legal framework is. He thinks that the law is for weaklings. He thinks complying with court orders are for fools. You know, he thinks that he is a strong man who rules with an iron fist, and no one can stop him. And so for him, the cruelty is the point. For Stephen Miller, the cruelty is the point. They want to be seen as cruel because they believe that that actually burnishes Donald Trump's overall image, not just on this issue, but across the board. They want to be seen as heartless. Remember going all the way back to the 2016 campaign when he would, you know, if there was a protester in the crowd, he would, you know, he'd point at them and say, you know, basically beat him up and get him out of here, right? The whole persona of Trump and Trumpism is to be cruel for the sake of being cruel. The lawyers who are trying to put a framework around this are actually, you know, doing a real disservice because they are causing lawyers and legal analysts and people to try to parse and analyze their words as if what they are saying, number one, makes any sense, but number two, reflects their clients. I mean, the fact is it doesn't. I mean, as you just heard, like, it doesn't reflect what the lawyers for the Department of Justice are saying in court does not reflect what Donald Trump is saying. It does not reflect what Pam Bondi is saying. It does not reflect what the cabinet is saying. It does not reflect what Stephen Miller is saying. It is just a bunch of weak lawyers at the Department of Justice who, to quote one of the lawyers who resigned over the Eric Adams matter, who said that the Department of Justice would find a fool or a coward to file a motion, but it wasn't going to be him. These are the fools and the cowards that are left. Right after the principled people left, the fools and the cowards are standing up before these judges and saying things that the judges know are not true, that the lawyers are sort of making the arguments they're making to sort of preserve their bar licenses and sort of put a patina of dignity around what is obscene. But it's not actually representing what Donald Trump thinks he's doing. Donald Trump thinks he's sending people to a gulag, and he's pretty damn proud of it. So that was me talking to Nicolle Wallace, as I like to do. She's really one of the best anchors on television and analysts about what's going on in democracy. And this conversation with her, I think, was interesting for a few reasons. The first is that, you know, it's important that we not give Donald Trump more credit for thinking through the law than he does. I mean, the fact is Donald Trump doesn't get what the law is. Donald Trump is not a curious person. He's not a smart person. He doesn't read. You know, I used to joke when he said he had not read Project 2025, that no kidding, he hadn't read Project 2025. It was 900 pages long. He's probably not read 900 pages in his life, his entire lifetime. So like, we tend to sometimes, I think, as lawyers, tend to overanalyze the legal positions and the legal arguments they're making. And there is really a big disconnect between what Donald Trump is saying, which is essentially, I want to be king, and therefore it doesn't matter what the law is, and what his lawyers at the Department of Justice are left saying, which are increasingly preposterous things. Like, they are saying things that they either know aren't true or certainly have to suspect are incomplete. And they are making legal arguments that the courts are like laughing them out of court over. And so that, you know, brought us into this second topic, which is this article I wrote for Democracy Docket, and I'll put the link here above and in the show notes below, about the presumption of regularity, which basically goes all the way back to FDR's days. And it says that the courts, when they evaluate what the president and the executive branch are doing, they're going to assume the best. They're going to assume that these are men and women of integrity, that they've thought this through, that they are acting in the country's best interest, that they are, you know, sharing the truth as they know it. And the fact is that all of that right now is being used by the lawyers representing Donald Trump to give him the benefit of the doubt when he does not deserve the benefit of the doubt. Not only doesn't he deserve the benefit of the doubt, it actually stands reality on its head. So when we give Donald Trump and his administration what is referred to as the presumption of regularity, we assume that he's acting in the ordinary course as a regular president. We are not just engaging in a fiction that is harmless. We are actually engaging in a fiction that will undermine democracy and, frankly, will ultimately topple it if we do not course correct. correct. So it's good to see the judges are being skeptical, but they need to be more than skeptical. They need to understand that when he goes after his political opponents, we cannot search for a neutral reason. We need to acknowledge he is doing it because he's going after his political opponents. That when he is sending migrants to the gulag, and that's what he says in the Oval Office, don't try to dress it up with a whole bunch of legal arguments that are not true. We should just accept that what he's doing is the unconstitutional thing that he says. What he says, he doesn't even know if he has to uphold the Constitution. Take him literally. You know, one of the worst pieces of advice we got early on about Donald Trump was take him seriously, but not literally. No, the courts need to take him literally. They need to stop with the presumption of regularity, stop assuming the best from him. And if they do that, then we stand a better chance. Please, if you've watched this video, if you've enjoyed it, or if you like any of the other content here on Democracy Docket, click the button to subscribe. It's really important that we at Democracy Docket increase our video reach so that people like you and others can have an opportunity to get informed through this channel, as well as our daily and weekly newsletters. If you want to subscribe to those, obviously, I always encourage that. The links for that are in the show notes below. But take a second right now, click the link to subscribe and hit the bell to make sure you are kept up to date and alerted every time we post a new video here. Thanks. This is Marc Elias, and I'll see you next time.